Who lubricates the machine joints with their own zombie takeout?
What's up? Welcome to episode 250 of Zombie
Takeout.
The B-Movie and Cult Movie Podcast. I'm Uncle John.
And I'm Scotto.
And before we get to this week's movie, we've got a little bit of listener submitted. This is from M Plays again, in reference to last week's episode. She simply said, "Awesome review, guys." Thank you, M.
Thank you very much.
I also wanted to take a moment to plug her YouTube channel. She does Let's Play videos, gameplay videos, short ones with a bit of a twist. Yeah, you might not want to watch them at work.
Oh, okay. Not safe for work. Gotcha.
Not exactly completely NSFW, but better safe. Anyway, on to this week's movie, which in honor of episode 250 is two movies. We have both from 1902, A Trip to the Moon, and from 1927, Metropolis. We'll start with A Trip to the Moon, and of course that brings us to the impromptu plot summary, sponsored by Dialogue. It's largely overrated.
And also brought to you by umbrellas, when you absolutely positively have to kill every last primitive alien species on the moon, except no substitutes.
They really could have used them in Avatar.
Maybe. Right. Alright, so we begin with these wizard scientists who assemble, and
Wizards.
I wonder if I can tell this faster than the actual movie. Anyway, we'll see. Where one wizard scientist has the idea of going to the moon, and of course he has some people supporting him and some people angry.
Well,
and
really
some
just one guy
scoffing.
complains.
Yeah. And so they get this. They build this ship. They get this hero send off where they are shot out of a cannon up to the moon. And they shoot his eye out. But anyway,
Yeah.
They get off. They explore the moon, which is a very alien world with many different things on it, including these creatures who are primitive creatures.
And look surprisingly like Greedo.
Yeah, they do, don't they? And they get captured by them. They manage to break out, and they fight their way back to the spaceship. They climb back in.
Except for one guy who tips it over a cliff while hanging on a rope outside of the spaceship.
Oh yes. The plan to get back. Never mind the module, ejecting up into the air. They fall off a cliff to the Earth, sea, and they are fished out, and of course given a hero's return. And hilarity ensues. I'm sorry I spoiled it for you guys.
Of course, it should be pointed out that this was made in 1902 before we had any clue of anything outside of the Earth's atmosphere.
Right, you might as well have been a wizard. Really.
And I also should mention, the reason you're calling them wizard scientists is because they're wearing long robes with, stars and planets on them.
Yes.
And pointy hats.
Right.
They look like rejects from a Harry Potter movie.
Now, when I first saw this, Netflix has a completely different version of this, actually.
Oh, we probably watched different versions, because I watched it on YouTube.
Tonight I watched it on YouTube, but I first saw this on Netflix about a month or so ago.
Okay.
Netflix has a version where people have dubbed dialogue over the whole thing.
I think I need to watch that.
It's pretty bad. You are so much better off just watching it on YouTube as I did tonight, and just there's enough clues as to what's going on. You don't need somebody spelling out for you what's going on.
There is, I should point out, a complete absence of dialogue in this film, and it's only 12, 13 minutes long.
Like, there's no dialogue. There's not
Yeah.
even,
It's not just a silent movie where you don't hear them talking. They're not talking. There's no title. There's no cards with
right. There's no
dialogue on them.
cards or anything like that.
So it's just physical acting, and they did a very impressive job of telling the story given that.
Yes.
I mean, it's a fairly simple story, but to do so without words, although there were some oddities. There are these groups of women who come in and hand them things and basically serve the wizard scientists.
Of course, because if you're a wizard scientist, you need to have
Hmm.
somebody serving you, I suppose.
According to Georges Méliès's notes as the director, they were Marines.
Really?
Yes. And one of the things they serve them with, for in the movie, is a sudden costume change in the middle of the opening scene. Like just after they decide to go to the moon, in come the Marines with this costume change.
Well, right. The men change too.
Mhm.
They change from the wizard outfits to the overcoats with top hats.
And only about 5 of them, only the ones who are actually going to the moon, I assume.
Right, right. They're the ones that are getting down to business.
Hmm. And on the positive side, I gotta say the sets in this were beautiful.
Right. You kind of wonder even how they did it back then.
Hmm. And some of the
1902.
effects, I mean, a lot of the effects are in hindsight obvious and a bit cheesy, but again,
Of
1902.
course.
But there are some that are really impressive, like the landing on the moon and the takeoff, so to speak, the falling off of the moon.
Well, just the where they're having the congregating, scene in the beginning
Hmm.
too, the big telescope and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
all of that. I
And when
mean,
they were loading the bullet that serves as their ship, they were literally shot from a gun in a big bullet.
yes.
That set piece was very interesting. There's a movie called Hugo that was out a few years back that it features. It's not about a trip to the moon, but it heavily features a trip to the moon and Georges Méliès, and it shows his studio, which is very interesting, or it shows a reproduction of his studio, which was effectively a greenhouse.
I would very much like to see, the props and the mats that they used for this.
His studio was all windows, ceiling and walls. It was just pure windows to let as much light in as possible.
Of course, a lot of people our age may recognize a lot of this. I posted
Mhm.
the video to our Facebook page, the Smashing Pumpkins video for Tonight Tonight.
I watched it just after watching the movie,
It's
and
fantastic to watch right after watching
yeah,
the movie.
because they did an amazing job of
Yes,
reproducing it.
there's so much there. I mean, that there's stuff that isn't exact, but there's stuff that you know that they just did so well in tribute to it.
Mhm.
Like even the ship's name, Melier at the
Even
end.
the story itself, for the most part, is very close.
Yeah, it is. Except there's a couple instead that take the
Yeah,
plunge, and it's just the
because of
two of
the
them.
nature of the song, and
Yeah,
they cut a few things out, and they added a bit at the end where they go underwater.
but it so works.
Yeah,
It's just as absurd as the
pretty much.
original.
Yeah, that to me is the music video version of the scene with all the stars and planets.
Right, where they go up there and there are these these earthly images of course justice and in the stars,
Hmm.
the constellations coming to life. Of course that'll be out there.
Hmm. Of course. And it should be mentioned that Méliès invented a lot of these tricks, like stopping the camera and changing something.
Well, yeah, because I mean, how much? One great thing about this episode tonight, of course, is that you can never hear us say, "Well, this is the oldest movie we've ever done." I think because
We
we can't get
will never say that
we
again because
we
this literally is the oldest movie we will most likely ever do.
I mean, if there's something before 1902, I don't know.
There most likely are movies older, but I don't think we'll be covering them.
Right? I don't think it's gonna be in our wheelhouse.
No. Incidentally, this is generally considered to be the first science fiction film, also.
Of course. I mean, how many films are there really before
Well, yeah,
1902?
that's why this is 12 minutes long. I was watching a couple of other Méliès movies last night, and they were like 2 or 3 minutes long. Basically, the motion picture camera had just been invented, and people were testing it.
Like Birth of a Nation, that's 1915.
Mhm. Also, this is on Village Voice's list of 100 greatest films in the 20th century, just barely making the 20th century.
Yeah.
Think about it. This is 90 years old, roughly. And it, in many ways, still holds up.
This is 113 years old.
Oh, 113. Oh, no, I'm thinking of Metropolis is almost 90. You're right. You're right. It's
Yeah.
over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And it still holds up in many ways. I mean, it's kind of silly and the effects are a little cheesy in hindsight, but if you think about the time, it's amazing.
Yeah. Aside from that, of course. I mean, it is only 10, 12 minutes, so you can't really complain, too much about it.
Right.
And, but yeah, for its time, it is downright amazing.
All right, so
Sequels and
on to
remakes?
say again.
Sequels and remakes?
The Smashing Pumpkins video.
Oh, yeah, there you go. They did it in 6.
No, 2 actually. It's 10 minutes shorter than the actual movie and packs in most of what's in the movie.
Huh, really?
I made sure to count. So on to Brains.
On to Brains.
I loved it. It's not only seminal. It's the first science fiction film. It broke so much ground, and it is still legitimately enjoyable. I get to go 5.
I think it's something. It's a curiosity. It's worth checking out. I mean, I don't know about entertaining, but you definitely should see it at least once. It's 12 minutes. What the fuck do you have to lose? So I'm going 4.
All right. We'll hold off on what if we learn till all of it.
Yeah, I don't think I learned all that much from that one anyway.
All right, so on to our next film, which is an actual full-length feature. And of course, as I said before, from 27, Metropolis, bringing us to the impromptu pause summary, sponsored by Class Warfare. Some things just never get old.
And also brought to you by Words. When making a film, for fuck's sake, use your words.
Well, they did use them in this. You just had to read them.
They didn't speak them.
They just had to read them. It was a bit before. I've been to research that. The first, and I hate this word, talkies.
Why do you hate talkies?
Well, not the actual movies, but just the term talkies. Just grates on me. But I meant to look up when the first movies with recorded dialogue were, but I forgot.
Is it acceptable to use the term walkie-talkie?
Yes.
But not to describe film with dialogue.
Anyway.
Okay.
Meant to look that up. If somebody out there knows offhand, leave a comment, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember when the exact year that it happened either, and when all the actors who had terrible voices careers were ruined.
Like Valentino.
Poor Valentino. Famously.
Anyway, on to the summary.
Voice of Mike Tyson. All right, so for this one, oh man, it's I think it was the year 2026 if I'm remembering right, and
yes.
Man, this one is quite the opposite. This was a hell of a week to do 2 movies with this one.
Well, yeah, because it's 2.5 hours long. I didn't know that when I signed on. Actually, when I came up with the idea, because we had decided on Metropolis, and I crowbarred A Crypt at the Moon in there, not realizing that Metropolis is 2.5 hours long.
Signing us up for just shy of 3 hours of movie watching this week. Well, anyway, we have the this sounds so crazy. A dystopian future of the city where the ruling wealthy class live literally in their towers, and the poor underclass are literally in the depths of the city. The son of the ruler of the city is just frolicking around in his garden. Looks a bit too much like Ray Liotta for my case.
A little bit, yeah.
And the earliest prediction of Hammer Pants ever made, his costume.
Yeah.
He is living the carefree life. He's got his choice of women pretty much out there, when sneaking into his pleasure garden is a woman from down below. She's taking some kids on a little field trip to see how the wealthy are living while they're living in their hell. She's shoot off, of course, quickly, but he's mesmerized by her, and we gotta have ourselves, of course, They came from the other side of the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, back then, not even that much of a cliche.
No, and it was still a couple hundred years after Shakespeare, and he ripped it off, but still not as much of a
Very
cliche
true.
now.
Very true. They
Just
came from the other side of the
look
tracks.
up Tristan and Isolde.
True, yes. And so he decides he's going to try to meet her again, and he's going to see what is their world like.
Hmm.
She seemed so different. The kids seemed so different from them. He could tell how they were dressed differently and everything. So he sneaks down into the factory. Uh, he switches clothes with a worker and takes his 10-hour shift, which the entire world down there is catered to. The clocks do not go to 12, they go to 10
Mm-hmm.
because that is the length of the shift. He realizes how shitty their life is, the job itself of switching candles, cans on a machine
Yep.
for 10 hours. And he witnesses a horrific accident where these people are killed in an explosion.
Hmm.
And
And then he kind of hallucinates.
yeah, he has this very weird hallucination. And well, he also discovers that there's this mystery that each person, when they're found, seems to have a map on them of some sort,
Hmm.
including the person he switched clothes with and the bodies of those who were found in the accident. Um, it's, of course, catacombs that are beneath the city, and there's some sort of meeting place that they all attend after their shifts are done.
Hmm.
So he goes to this, and it's, of course, his Maria from the other side of the tracks. And I'm trying to remember what she preached exactly,
Well,
but
there were a
it's,
lot of crosses, but it didn't really get all that religious at that point. She told
yeah,
a variation on the Tower of Babel, but it's not the biblical version. It's basically an indictment of the wealthy class.
right. So there's this indictment of the wealthy class, but I mean, there's all these crosses in the background, and but there's this, prophecy, of course, of a coming mediator who will
Hmm.
smooth things over for everybody.
The Kwisatz Haderach.
Yes, yes. Only, you just have to spell that out. You wouldn't have to say it. So of course he's that mediator. It takes a rich white guy to really make
Well,
effective change.
because he's lived in both worlds.
Well, yes, now he's lived in both worlds. He is the Christ figure who has come down
Hmm.
to, give himself to
This was way more religious than I realized.
the riffraff below. And so there's a lot of crazy subplots here,
Hmm.
including, of course,
We're not even to the main one.
yes. And really, the main one isn't the main one. The
True.
the the robot is really just a side thing,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm getting at now. There's this inventor who was in love with our hero's mom, but was stolen away from him by his father, and so he's plotting revenge by making this robot he'll make it look like her, but gets bossed into making it look like Maria.
Hmm.
Which, I mean, come on, religious imagery, Maria, come on.
Yeah. Good point.
um,
Because Freder's father, the Kwisatz Haderach's father, wants to basically incite the working class to violence, so he has an excuse to use violence against them.
yes, and so he creates the Whore of Babylon, which, wow, they really beat you over the head with.
Yeah.
She's a good time gal, apparently. Goes into the clubs and rips people into a frenzy and gets them, violence against each other, uh, against the state, against the machinery, against everything. And there, of course, are many riot scenes and
Mhm.
chases, and because then there's, of course, two Marias going.
Yeah, one is leading the underclass up from the city, from the
Yes,
worker city. The other is whipping the upper class into a frenzy, and the lower class at times.
right, exactly. And is, of course, the climatic fight scene is between. It really doesn't make much sense
No,
between between Frederer and the inventor Hartwig. Is it? I can't remember his name now.
Rotwang.
Rotwang.
When your name is Rotwang, you know you're going to be the villain.
Mm, that is unavoidable.
Hmm.
And I can say hilarity ensues.
Hmm. Now, I lost count of how many things I saw that were influenced by this.
Oh, of course. My God. Coruscant.
Within like the first 3 minutes, I couldn't count anymore. Most obvious being C3PO, of course, and Lucas is
Well, yeah.
very open about that.
Yeah.
That scene just before the accident in the factory, where they're all moving the arms on the clocks or whatever they're doing,
Yeah.
I know I've seen that in an Oingo Boingo video. And pretty much half of the new wave videos in the 80s borrowed from this.
Well, yeah. This is why Moroder had
Hmm.
Giorgio
Yeah, yeah.
had such a affinity for this and really wanted to bring this back.
Hmm.
It is just so 1980s, this whole thing.
Hmm. And in addition to the obvious religious angles, which I really didn't catch, to be honest, except for a bit in the middle, this is also the social stratification statement writ large.
Yeah.
And kind of oversold, though in 27 maybe not as oversold as it is now.
Well, just think about it though. Back then,
It may have been a new
how
statement at the time.
crazy the world was back then. I mean,
Hmm.
we think it's crazy now, but I mean, this is 10 years after the Soviet Revolution.
That's true, yeah.
This is 20, 30 years after a lot of anarchist riots
Hmm.
throughout the world.
Yeah,
I
10
mean,
years after World War One.
yeah. So, the world, Germany's still rebuilding at this point, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
Of course, the Nazis really like this.
Yeah, apparently this was Goebbels' favorite movie. Hitler really liked it too. And Fritz Lang kind of hated his own movie because of that association.
So, I mean, it's a very childlike message, though, which is probably why they loved it.
Hmm.
Um, and they kind of bastardized the final message in the
Oh,
end,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is, I mean, it's simplistic. It's, hey, workers, do your best, take pride in your work and do a good job. And ruling class, look
Don't
out
be a
for
dick.
yeah, don't be a dick. Look out for the welfare of your workers and their well-being.
Hmm. But as I mentioned in my sponsor, the whole class warfare angle is still relevant today.
Oh yeah, yeah, it is.
I mean, the resolution in this version doesn't quite work now, but
No,
the
it
basic
didn't work then either.
no, but the setup of the class warfare was it's all I think it's always going to be relevant. I think it's a human condition thing.
Well, because I mean, the Nazis took this and said, "Yes, let's
Hmm.
all work together."
Yeah.
All of us being white Christian.
Yeah. And just getting back to a comment I made about a trip to the moon, the sets in this again amazing.
Oh man, visually this is just ridiculous.
Yeah. For some reason, the sets even looked more three-dimensional than a modern movie.
Oh yeah. Oh, very much so. I mean, it's it does go out in all different angles. I think what really jumps out even more is the choreography of this.
Yeah.
I mean, the scene where the shift change at the beginning,
Hmm.
they express so much without any words
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, my sponsor was a bit tongue in cheek. It was more just an excuse to use the same fucking joke,
Right. Right.
call back to
Hmm.
that for like 250 episodes now at
Right.
this point. Uh, but they do so much in that shift change with their movements, and you can even see like a lot of 1980s videos. I'm
Hmm.
looking at You Thriller using that.
Yeah. Or the guy on the clock that Freder replaces. I know I've seen that guy in about 50, probably, I was going to say 50, but in all honesty, about 5 to 10 videos from the 80s use that imagery. It's just kind of amazing. And also, our age, we lived through the 80s, we watched them at the time, so we're a little more aware of that.
Right. Story-wise, though, this goes this rambles.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. It didn't really drag for me until that last half hour, though.
I mean, I think this could easily have been like a half hour shorter
Oh,
than it
yeah, yeah.
was.
That's where it started dragging for me, particularly when they were, leading the kids out of the, flooding city.
I mean, I skipped an awful lot in the impromptu plot summary because there was a lot of useless shit. Like what the guy he exchanged his, life for that day
Yeah.
is quite irrelevant. Yeah, it explains, why he, comes back in the end to help him, but still.
And there's this really kind of pointless thing about his father's spy, the Thin Man,
Yes,
following this guy whose life he thought he took, or he
all of that.
exchanged.
The Thin Man is entirely useless too.
Yeah.
In fact, that whole thing about the guy he exchanged his life with, why he'd come back, because you remember that he exchanged his life for and gave him a break and stuff. You don't need to see that he went to a club instead of going to some stupid apartment, because Freder never makes it back to the apartment either.
Yeah. I have a feeling that he was just trying to be epic with the length, just trying to go big.
Well, yeah, and obviously, I mean, everything about this was about going big.
The cityscapes, I just want to mention those in terms of the visual amazingness of this movie.
Yes, so much care into each frame. It's forced, of course. I mean, you could tell they're like, the poses and everything is put in its place for a reason.
Well, yeah, but I mean, consider a lot of German art. It's very much that way.
When you don't have words to fall back
That
on,
too, yeah.
and only so much you can express, you gotta do what you can with it. So yeah, that I don't have a problem with at all. It's a very positive of the film.
Particularly, you mentioned the movements. When Maria was running away from Rotwang, it looked like a dance number.
Oh yeah, a lot of those are dance numbers, and just the choreography is amazing in this. I don't know if I've seen a film with the choreography this good. I don't know when.
Even today, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, the strongest thing about it is just in general, visually, even, and I'll get the number right now, almost 90 years later, it will still blow your mind if you've never seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, incidentally, I was watching it with the subtitles on. Netflix kind of did that by default, I guess, because it's German.
I had to shut the subtitle, the closed caption off.
I turned them off eventually, but not until it said grave drum and bass music playing.
Yes.
Because it listed all of the, I guess it was for the hearing impaired or something,
yes.
but it listed all of the music cues. Drum and bass music. I just couldn't help but laugh at that. Yet, no. I mean, it was very low bass and percussion kind of music, but it wasn't drum and bass.
I had to tap out. It was too much.
I turned them off eventually when I realized I was still going to see subtitles of all the text, even without them.
The music speeds up. I'm like, yes, I can hear that. Thank you very much.
It also kind of oversells the machine is devouring us angle.
Of course.
There's a lot of technophobia in this, which makes sense for the time. It was just after World War I, and war brings a lot of technological advancements. So a lot of that stuff was just sort of hitting the market, I guess, at that point.
Well, yeah, Henry Ford and his assembly line. I think that's where they took a lot of the fear from.
Yeah.
Is the assembly line. And I cheated a little bit on this one and read some other reviews, just because, of course, it's a fucking epic and just kind of interested to see how it was received at the time. And some dude named H.G. Wells absolutely hated this.
Really?
So preposterous. How could machines possibly add dreariness to your life rather than take it away?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh,
Opposite ends of the spectrum, and you look at Well's work, and it makes sense that he would be
right.
very pro technology.
Who would buy the product that the workers were making then?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Now, about the characters, like you said, the Thin Man was pointless. Freder gets a little annoying
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
he's just pure ideal.
Oh, definitely.
Gotta say, I kind of felt bad for Josephat because he just kept getting beat and beat and beat at every turn in this movie.
But his character's pretty pointless too.
His character's pointless, but I'm sympathetic just because he could not catch a break no matter what.
Oh, well, that's the idea. There are these people who just down on their luck and downtrodden.
And basically what happened was, they find out about the maps and, about how the working class is kind of starting to rise. And, the shit's hitting the fan, and Joe Frederson, Freder's father, love those names,
Yeah.
kind of has to account for stuff, and so he fires his yes man. And then the yes man somehow gets mixed up with Freder, and then the thin man, and he just
Well,
couldn't catch a break.
Freder, sympathizes with him, and
Hmm.
doesn't want him turned out and thrown
Yeah.
down to the depths to become a laborer.
Although their relationship was a tad homoerotic.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah. That is like in my notes too. It was like a little too handsy.
I was honestly expecting them to kiss at any given moment.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Of course.
So yeah, yeah, I agree. I thought they were gonna kiss at a couple different moments. I'm like, wait a minute, you're seeing this other chick though, man, and this is way too early for this shit.
Yeah, true. Also, the movie gets a little weird in the middle.
A little,
Toward the end of the prelude, which is almost half of the movie,
yes.
but it's when Maria the Machine starts to come into play, and she's apparently going to destroy the world with stripping.
Yes.
And so you have her doing this really disturbing striptease, which is not a phrase I ever thought I would say.
Well, sir, you just have not been to the right strip clubs.
Intercut with this sort of hallucination dream thing that Freder was having where these statues at a church come to life.
Yes.
And it's the seven deadly sins and the Grim Reaper.
Playing a flute? I
That
thought
was
I
a bone,
dreamt half this
actually.
shit because I was really tired by that point last night. But yes,
It's the Grim Reaper, so it's the skeleton with the hood and the sickle, or
yes.
scythe. And he apparently produces a bone. I don't know if it was one of his or if it was just sitting around, and plays it like a flute.
He ain't got no body. Anyway,
It's just this weird little thing in the middle, and then it goes back to, well, as normal as it ever was. It doesn't keep that weirdness up after that point.
right. It. That's why I believe it's just so rambling.
Hmm.
There's just a lot of stuff that they had whims
Yeah.
and no one there to say no or nine in
Hmm.
this case.
And there's also stuff that is way ahead of its time and still relevant today, like the idea that Frederson was, going to incite the working class to violence so that he had an excuse to use violence against them.
I think they were taking that from like the anarchist, uprisings and from
Mhm.
about 20 years earlier.
And it's still relevant today. It still goes on.
I mean, we hear a lot about that in Chicago here, the
Hmm.
Haymarket riots and different things like that. Like I think I've even said this in past episodes. I work in a building that was built like 10 years before this film maybe or
Hmm.
15 years before this film, and one could easily look at it as a fortress
Hmm. Yeah.
that's at the base of the river, like at the entrance of the city. I mean, it's a garrison.
Yeah.
It's a way to keep people from the other part of it from coming into the city.
Mhm.
So it's just the time period. I don't think they were that far ahead of their time. I think that it was a product of the time.
Hmm.
We just haven't solved the problem
Yeah,
from that
exactly.
time.
Yeah.
Or just keep agitating it and
Hmm.
making it new.
Okay, now there was one moment that seemed very odd to me, aside from that little
Just one.
interlude with the statues. After that, aside from that, when Freder and Maria finally find each other toward the end, they embrace like it's this big reunion. She barely knew he existed.
They
He's
had a
he
scene
saw
or
her
two together,
twice.
didn't they? Yeah,
He saw her
twice.
twice and barely talked to her at all. She might kind of think he looks familiar, but she's never really talked to him. I don't know why there was this big embrace.
Actually, they're still. This is not completely restored.
Mhm.
There's
That's true. There is some missing pieces.
there's one scene missing, I think, or a
Mhm.
couple scenes, and it mostly has to do with him freeing her
Oh,
from they use placards to explain what happened there. And I'm like, that's a pretty fucking important scene. He frees her from Rotwang's dungeon.
okay. Now that explains the big embrace then. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know how they get separated after that exactly because that scene's missing too.
Mhm.
But I think they said this is 95%, complete now.
Also, it cost at the time 5 million Reichsmarks,
Who knows how much that was worth?
which is about 200 million as of 2007. So it's actually like a proper modern day film budget.
Wow. Uh, and I can see that because I mean the sets were just
Hmm.
crazy.
Amazing.
There's no CGI. I think there are very few mats
Mm.
used. I mean, there's some like in the background, but there's a lot of stuff that they're climbing and jumping off of, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of crazy shit that that's functioning that they built.
Yeah,
So I could see where the money went
yeah.
easily.
And it was inspired by Lang's trip to New York in 24. He saw skyscrapers and, he conceived the concept.
Huh. Well, where the cities were going.
Also inspired, of course, the city Metropolis in DC Comics.
Oh,
That's where it
okay.
came from.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And just one more point about the actual movie. The ending was kind of predictable. They set him up as the heart, the mediator, so when he actually becomes it, you kind of knew that was coming.
Yeah. You should have announced spoilers before that.
It's 90 years old. Or 88 to be specific. On to sequels and remakes, and I actually do have something for sequels and remakes.
Of course.
There's an anime called Metropolis that is loosely based on this. It doesn't follow the story exactly, but there are hints and it's visual. It's very similar. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't seen the whole thing. You need to check it out one of these days.
Giorgio tried to
Yeah, and
put
you have
something together.
Giorgio Moroder's version. There's about 20 versions of Metropolis out there. It's like
Yeah.
there's several versions of Trip to the Moon as well.
Well, I think Giorgio was trying to actually get a remake done
Oh,
too, like
okay.
on top of that,
Hmm.
and
He
I don't
couldn't
think it
make it
ever
happen.
came to light.
Remake would be interesting.
Of
I
course.
mean, we have the remake of Moon, so we didn't really talk about that with the Smashing Pumpkins video, but that's effectively a remake.
Yeah.
But a Metropolis remake would be very interesting, especially if you do what a lot of directors do with Shakespeare and you modernize it.
And you know what? I could see it happening in the next, 10, 11 years because they're almost to the point where we're at the time
Yeah.
they're predicting.
Hmm. True. Yeah, we're 10 years off, 11 years.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, you could see some people finding controversy in it considering it's loved by the
Yeah,
Nazis,
yeah.
but what can you do?
But the director wasn't a sympathizer, though. From what I read, his wife was.
Right, right. They kind of split the two up
Yeah,
where
and they co-wrote the movie, so.
yeah, where she was ecstatic by it and,
Hmm.
went and joined the party and he just I don't know what he did while they were in
He
power.
moved to the U.S., I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he went to France first, then the U.S. He left Germany because it just completely disturbed him that the Nazis liked the movie.
Yeah. And who could blame him? Who could blame him? You
Oh, of
imagine
course,
that? You put
of course.
something out, and then these fucking assholes are just like, "This is the best."
Yeah.
You're like, no, no, that's not the point of that. Oh no, you really hit the nail on the head here. No, no, sir.
Ooh, yeah, that would be. I hadn't really
Yeah,
thought about that. These people who are just morally who are just morally repugnant think that your creation serves their purposes.
yeah. And in a way, how could he have been so blind? I mean, just the whole thing of like we're all gonna work together,
Mm.
and this whole crazy like strict religious interpretation, and
And also the bastardization of the Communist Manifesto. And
well, right, to take that and mix it with religion at the same time. Yeah, that's
mm,
what they did,
yeah,
man.
true. All right, on to Brain.
Onto brains.
Loved it. The story's iffy at points and predictable. And obviously I'm not crazy about all the religious stuff, but visually it is absolutely stunning and so influential. I gotta go 5.
Ah, man, this one's tough. Because visually it is perfect, but it's just so rambling and batshit crazy and not necessarily the most entertaining of ways.
Unlike a movie that was on tonight, I'm guessing. Sharknado 3 was on
Yeah,
tonight. We'll be getting to that
yeah,
soon.
we will. We have some shitty movies to do first, though.
Yeah. Anyway, where are you going?
Um, I don't know if I could actually recommend this honestly, because I mean
Wow.
it's it's a lot to invest in this.
Mhm.
I had a chance to see this with like this a live symphony orchestra, and I kind of regret not
Mhm.
being able to take advantage of that. Uh, so I will go with Four Brains just for the visuals alone, and of course the time period that this
Mhm.
was done in. But storytelling wise,
Yeah,
they really didn't have
true.
that part of filmmaking down at
Well, it
all.
was early. All right, so what have we learned?
Uh, it just takes a rich white guy to make the world a better place.
And this is in reference to both movies. I learned that modern filmmakers are lazy.
Yes.
Think about the ingenuity and creativity in these movies just from a visual perspective.
Yeah.
If modern filmmakers had that kind of ingenuity with modern technology, could you imagine? I mean, Terry Gilliam approaches it.
I think Gilliam and Del Toro.
Del Toro, yeah, true. But I don't think they're working quite as hard as these guys had to.
Well, they don't have to, but I think considering we can only come up with a couple names really,
Yeah, true, true.
and there aren't many others.
And those two are, from a visual perspective, in a class by themselves.
Yeah, there really aren't many others
Mm,
that approach it. I mean, I suppose you take the three amigos from the '70s, Lucas, Spielberg, and Milius.
yeah, true. Particularly Lucas with Star Wars. He was on this level.
I don't know if I mentioned this on. No, I don't think I did. I watched over one of the breaks the documentary about John Milius.
We talked about it, I think, off air.
Highly recommend it because yeah, those three that I mentioned were classmates
Hmm.
at film school.
And for those who may not be familiar, just remind us what Milius has done.
Milius, he co-wrote the screenplay of Conan the Barbarian with Oliver Stone of all people,
Hmm.
and directed it himself.
uh,
And he was pretty much the dialogue guy for a long time. He
uh,
made his living writing a lot of dialogue, including the Indianapolis speech in Jaws.
oh wow.
And that was really just a favor to Spielberg because
Hmm.
Spielberg had it and was like, "This needs a lot more." They just kind of called him one night, and he
Wow.
apparently gave him like a 10-page speech just over the phone off the top of his head that Robert Shaw had to like pare down to the
Mm.
final speech.
I honestly think the first half of Jaws still needs a bit more. It's great once they're on the boat, that first half.
Well, yeah. Once they're on the boat, that's where everybody really. And and really, Milius is the guy This is what we have talked about in the past. He's the guy in Big
Yes.
Lebowski,
He was
played
the
by
inspiration for Walter.
because he's notorious for pulling guns out on executives. And Lucas even tells a story about him punching out a film teacher because he wouldn't show THX in class because nobody else had finished their film yet.
Wow.
And Milius just got. I mean, Lucas said people deny this, but I saw this myself. Milius just charged him from out of nowhere, punched him in the face, and stood over him and pointed down at his finger's face. We're going to show that film today.
Wow. Oh my. Alright, so until next time, when we'll be reviewing I, Frankenstein, starting off another trilogy of shit.
I feel like the workers at the beginning of the shift change.
Well, here's the sad part, because I, Frankenstein is the most hopeful of the three.
It is. It's questionable whether it belongs in a shit trilogy, of course.
We'll see. We'll find out next week.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to talk about this at the top of the show. I had a bit of a computer issue over the weekend. Actually, the day I put out the last episode, last Saturday, my computer suddenly decided it couldn't find its operating system.
Oh.
This is my laptop, my Windows machine.
I don't think I've ever heard that happen about a computer before.
Yeah.
Some sort of virus?
It occasionally happens. Usually it means damage to the hard drive.
Oh.
It's known to happen when you're restarting. Mine wasn't restarting. I was away from the computer when it happened, but I was in the room. It didn't restart. It just suddenly said, I can't find my operating system. So it's pretty much dead at the moment. I had to hobble together. Well, I had to move my Mac Mini to my desk and kind of hobble together the stuff to record this episode and pay $50 for a recording program.
Damn.
So it may sound a little different for the next few weeks until we can get back to the old setup. Just in case you notice a difference in sound, just wanted to mention that. Alright, so until next time, go to zombietakeout.com, check out the album art, the episode description, of course, the episode itself, which you're already listening to. Links to find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and YouTube. Links to subscribe via RSS and iTunes. Please leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. You also find the movie list, every movie we've reviewed so far, and every movie we're going to review, up through horns. Forgot to mention the other two parts of the shit trilogy. Should we get into that now, or surprise them? So far, Showgirls is the only movie I've ever vowed to never watch again. The end of this trilogy might bring the second.
It's pretty bad. I mean, Catwoman and
Left Behind.
Left Behind.
The Nicolas Cage version. From what I understand, the Cameron version is actually better. I'll just put it that way.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's insane.
You'll also find the request form. If you've got a movie you'd like to hear us review, please leave it on the request form and the recommendations list. I'm glad they both made it. They're both classics that really deserve to be there.
I was really close to not putting it. I think Prestige got Metropolis on.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anything else.
It's worth it visually. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You can email us, zombietakeout@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail at 414-368-ZTO1, or for the alphanumerically challenged.
You can go fuck yourself.
That's why I'm surprised you used that number. Go to the Facebook page, you'll see what I'm talking about. 414-368-9861. Of course, always remember that you'll always be calling from the middle of Milwaukee, and until next time, always remember, never forget, wherever you go in life, there you are.
There you are.
do brains separately or together?
We could do brains separately.
Okay.